Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be giving you some more mental health fiction recommendations. I have made quite a lot of videos on mental health and books in the past. I'll link a ton of them in the description below if you want to check them out, but I have not made a mental health recommendations video in well over a year. It's been such a long time and I really wanted to make a new one. I will say, if you are an avid watcher of my channel, you probably have heard me talk about all these books at least once or twice before. I haven't read a lot of mental health fiction as of late. It's something I'd like to get back into in 2019, but I still wanted to make an updated recommendations video for you guys. I will say one thing that sets this recommendations video apart from my previous ones on the same topic. I do have a few books in here that are not necessarily mental health fiction. The plots of these first two books aren't necessarily centered on the main character's mental illness, but they are dealing with a disorder while engaging in the rest of the story, because I just feel like not everyone always wants to read a super emotionally dense novel about mental health issues. Sometimes people just want to see themselves in characters that are doing amazing things but still able to identify with them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The first book I want to recommend to you is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I'm sure y'all have heard me talk about this book a lot because I love this series so much. This is a young adult thriller that takes place at an elusive academy up in Vermont, where students are invited to study whatever subjects they are incredibly passionate about for free. In 1936, the founder of Ellingham Academy's wife and daughter were both kidnapped, and the only clue was a letter signed Truly Devious. So in the present story, we follow a girl named Stevie who is attending Ellingham Academy for the first time and is intent on solving the cold case from all those years ago. I've talked about how great the mystery and plot of this story is in the many videos where I've recommended it before, but I feel like I don't mention as frequently that Stevie actually deals with anxiety throughout the entirety of the first two books in this series. Stevie deals with anxiety and panic attacks and takes medication as a way to treat her mental illness, while all of these murders and mysteries and investigations are going on at the central plot of the story. I feel I connect really well with Truly Devious because I also deal with anxiety, but like Stevie, I'm also really interested in true crime, and it's interesting to me because true crime actually really triggers my anxiety despite it being something that also brings me a lot of joy. And so I think it is so cool to watch a character like Stevie who deals with a lot of the same constant worries and pressures that I also deal with, but also is investigating these murders and putting herself in dangerous situations and setting that aside for something that she really loves doing. In the book community, Truly Devious is praised for being a really fantastic mystery novel, but I think the fact that it has great mental health representation is also very underrated. So I would just love to see more people reading it. I think that Stevie is a character a lot of people will be able to relate to, and I know a lot of you guys are also interested in mystery, thrillers, and true crime and such. So I think this would be a great fit for a lot of you. The next book I'd like to recommend to you guys is Nice Try Jane Sinner by Leanne Olkey. This is a young adult contemporary novel that follows a girl named Jane Sinner who has been kicked out of her high school and is attending a local community college to finish getting credits so she can graduate. Jane comes from a super religious household that she no longer agrees with, and she believes that she has found her out when she sees a flyer for a campus-run reality show. House of Orange is really similar to Big Brother in the sense that students will come in, they get to pay really low rent to live in this house on campus, and they compete in weekly challenges and eventually are voted off until one person wins a used car. I love Nice Try Jane Sinner. It is an incredibly underrated book, but everyone I know who has read it has really loved it. It's told in a journal narrative as if Jane is writing down and recollecting the events of the days in a journal, and Jane's voice is just unforgettable. Honestly, she has the best dry humor and it is super honest and authentic. It feels like you really are reading an actual person's personal journal. The character dynamics are super engaging and just the overall plot is really fun and will make you want to continue reading it and not stop. But within all of that, there is this theme of mental health as Jane deals with depression and has some experience with suicide, and we find that to be a really large part of her identity that's uncovered throughout the story. The author herself has been open about her own struggles with depression, which makes this an own voices novel, and I also just found this to be a really authentic portrayal. Like Truly Devious, the main plot of this book is not about Jane's depression, but the story is told through her eyes that are of course influenced by her mental health issues. It's the type of book that I feel has the ability to really bring comfort for others and make them feel less alone, while also giving them an entertaining story and just like an overall enjoyable experience. So if you have not picked up Nice Try Jane Seymour yet, I would highly recommend you do so, because it is truly like a very memorable read. The next book I'd like to recommend to you guys is one I have not talked about in like a really long time. I feel like I talked about it in my wrap up and never mentioned it again, and that's such a shame because I adore it, and it is 4 Weeks, 5 People by Jennifer Yu. This book was actually sent to me as a gift from a subscriber named Kimberly, so thank you so much, Kimberly, for sending this to me, because you honestly found like one of my new favorite mental health novels. 4 Weeks, 5 People follows 5 teens who have all been sent to this sort of mental health therapy retreat camp. Each of the characters come from very different backgrounds with different struggles. Clarissa has obsessive compulsive disorder, Andrew has an eating disorder, Stella has depression, Mason has narcissistic personality disorder, and Ben has borderline personality disorder with dissociative symptoms. And this novel just follows the 5 of them as they are all sent away to this therapy camp and really getting to know each other and working through their own issues. I love this book. Like, this book really gives me like a nice heartwarming feeling, and that's honestly like, there are some really great mental health novels that will make you cry and so sad, but it's really nice to also find a mental health novel that leaves you feeling so hopeful and empowered and wonderful, and that's why like I love this book so much. Clearly there's a lot of different representation in this novel. Additionally, Clarissa is Asian and the author is Asian as well. Plus the author has also been open about her struggles with eating disorders and depression, which makes this like a super jumbo packed own voices novel. What else could you want? I really enjoyed Clarissa's character because she is sort of like a voice of reason for the group. She is very motivated in recovery and really wants to make a difference in her life. She ends up like potentially considering to become a counselor, which like, hello, that's my shiz right there. So I really enjoyed getting to see that perspective on mental health. Also, something really brilliant about 4 Weeks, 5 People that I really appreciated is that with Clarissa's obsessive compulsive disorder, she has a fixation on numbers, and specifically the number 7. And there's this one point where Clarissa is writing a letter home to her mother, and every paragraph in that letter has 7 sentences. I love that this is one of the very few books that exist featuring a boy with an eating disorder with Andrew's struggle with anorexia. Like, that is something that is almost never touched upon in media, but it's a real struggle that actual people experience, and so I really valued getting his perspective in this story. One thing that I feel happens a lot in mental health fiction is that disorders become very monolithic, with the same symptoms and the same storylines being told over and over and over again, and that doesn't really show how expansive these disorders can manifest. So I really appreciate when I go into a book with something like depression that is widely represented and having it tell a different story that is still very true. And I say that because Stella's depression was a very unique experience that I hadn't read a lot about before, but it was still very relatable, and so there was just like so much I loved about this book. The only negative thing I have to say about it is that like I just wish there was more development. I don't think it's underdeveloped, I just think that there was room for more to be expanded upon. Like, it's a short book. I could have dealt with like more chapters just really going into these characters and the dynamics, but nonetheless, overall, it's a really fantastic novel. I think so many people, like those of you who really like my mental health recommendations, would enjoy it, so I highly recommend you pick it up. The next book I'd like to recommend to you guys is very special to me, and that is Challenger Deep by Neil Shusterman. Now, this is a book that can't really be summed up by a synopsis, so I feel all I can really say about the plot is that it is about a boy named Caden who is dealing with schizophrenia. This story has a very unique dual narrative where we have Caden interacting at school with his family and watching his condition worsen, but then we also have many chapters of Caden on a boat, on a pirate ship, and interacting with the people on there, and it just creates a very almost bizarre but memorable experience. It's very literary. I will say that if you're someone who is not accustomed to very deep and flowery and just literary prose, the book might start out a little challenging for you. Haha, challenging. but I promise you it's worth pushing through. It was very out of my comfort zone to start, but I fell in love with this story by the end. One of Neil Shusterman's sons actually deals with schizophrenia himself, and so this is sort of inspired by his son, and there are illustrations that his son has drawn to help him cope with his own disorder that are featured throughout the story, which I found to be a great addition. I just love everything about Challenger Deep. Like, in addition to the really incredible writing and the very unique story, the portrayal of Caden's disorder was so honest and relatable to me. I dealt with a period of psychosis in my adolescence, and it was an incredibly difficult time, especially because it is not something that I really understood or had ever seen in media like the other issues I've dealt with, like eating disorders and depression and anxiety that are captured all the time. But I felt so understood and represented by Caden throughout this story. Like, there was this one particular moment where Caden is walking, because he just walks for miles and miles and miles throughout this book. He's walking one night and he is just hallucinating really terribly and interacting with strangers on the street, and there's just so much pain and suffering in that moment, and I was like, wow, I've had that exact same day, and it just made me feel really comforted and not alone, and that was an amazing moment for me while reading this novel. It's really beautiful and special in my opinion. It's a one-of-a-kind novel, and especially if you're someone who is looking for more young adult books that are a little bit more sophisticated and challenging to read, highly recommend Challenger Deep. Please pick it up. This book is like a National Book Award winner, and I still feel like it's not talked about a lot in the community. So if you have not read it yet, you definitely should. The next book I'd like to recommend to you guys is Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert. This is another one that I really haven't talked about in a hot second, so I'm glad I'm making this video. This story follows a girl named Suzette who has recently returned from the boarding school she has been attending for some months and comes home to her family where her brother has bipolar disorder. As Suzette is getting accustomed to being back in Los Angeles and starting her new summer job, she realizes that she ends up falling for the same girl that her brother is currently in love with. And along with that secret Suzette has to carry, things are really intensifying for Lionel with his illness, and that places a lot of additional stress on Suzette, who is trying to help him and keep his secrets, but she has a lot of difficult decisions to make about herself. Damn, this book is really fucking good, and like, I don't talk about it enough. Suzette is Black, bisexual, and Jewish, so there's a lot of really rich discussion about intersectionality in this book that I greatly appreciated. Additionally, Suzette comes from a blended family where her mother is her birth mother, but Lionel is her stepbrother and she has a stepfather. So there's a lot of different family dynamics that I feel are captured in this novel that aren't really explored in YA, which I also really appreciated. So not only is this book hella diverse and deals with some really great mental health representation, but also it's super compelling and entertaining with the storyline of a sister falling in love with the girl that her brother loves. Ugh, so fun.
Basically what I'm trying to say is that love triangles still can be fun and entertaining as long as 2/3 of them aren't straight.
But with that, it's also super emotional and heavy. Like, I was not prepared going into this book. Honestly, I typically go into books where the main character's sibling has a mental illness or a disability with some skepticism, because very frequently those stories turn into inspiration porn and it's very unsettling. But Little and Lion is the complete opposite of that and is a really beautiful exploration of what it is like to have a loved one that has a severe mental illness. The themes and messages in this book are so important, and it really taught me a lot about how I can best support the people in my life who do need that from me as well. There is just endless value in this story, whether it is Lionel's representation of bipolar disorder, which as someone who also has a family member with bipolar disorder was spot on in my opinion, but also the different situations that Suzette is put into, I feel are just very teachable for readers, and there's so much to gain from experiencing this story. So if you have not picked Little and Lion up yet, you really should. So I left this final book for last because I don't feel it is like the most new recommendation. I'm confident a lot of you have read it already, but of course, number one, it's going to be nice for us to all chat about again with how much we enjoy it, but also, if you haven't read it yet, you really should. And that is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. Oh my god, I just realized. So I actually received this book from the staff at Goodreads when I visited their office a few years ago, and I just realized, until now I never opened to this page, but they all signed it for me. How sweet is that? Shout out to Goodreads. This story follows a girl named Eliza who at school is very shy and reserved. She doesn't have a ton of friends, but online she is a wildly popular, almost famous webcomic designer. No one knows her true identity, but one day a new boy shows up at school and Eliza finds out that while they start forming a friendship, he is a huge fan of her webcomic. Eliza herself deals with anxiety, and it's a very prominent theme all throughout the book in relation to her being at school, making new friends, and pulling herself out of her shell, but also in the way that she conducts herself online with her work and following her dreams and such. It does capture how anxiety affects like every aspect of many people's lives, and I feel that is so important to see in books. Additionally, I don't believe it's confirmed in text, and I haven't necessarily been able to find a record of the author saying this is the case, but in like so many reviews, and myself included, believe that Wallace, who is Eliza's new friend in the story, also deals with selective mutism. If you don't know what that means, selective mutism is a particular type of anxiety disorder characterized by a person's inability to speak and communicate effectively in different locations, but not in others. So they might be very talkative at home or with their friends, but they are unable to speak at school or work, for example. So while the term selective mutism isn't necessarily used in this book, it's very clear to me that that is what Francesca Zappia was trying to create in the story. And again, I found it really authentic, and I'm really happy to see some other types of anxiety disorders being portrayed in literature. Also, on a final note, the ending of this book is really emotionally heavy. Like the beginning of this novel, the first like 3/4 of this novel are super lighthearted and fun and almost like fluffy in a sense, but then you get to the end and it's just like, wow, everything is crumbling down, and I feel so bad for the characters, and I just want them to be happy. And it's just a really great reading experience. If you haven't read Eliza and Her Monsters yet, I know so many of you have, but if you haven't, it's a totally worthwhile read if you're someone who really enjoys mental health contemporary novels. So that concludes my newest mental health fiction recommendations video. I'm so happy I filmed like my 3rd one now. I'm having a great time, and I hope you guys enjoyed. In the comments below, definitely let me know some of your favorite novels that deal with mental health themes or books that you have really identified with, because I would love to know, and I definitely have so many more mental health books that I need to be reading soon. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!